Hello, and welcome back to the Empowered Eating Disorders podcast. In this episode, we cover Christmas, New Year, and topics that may be triggering for some people to listen to, specifically in relation to mental health and eating disorders. If you'd like to learn more about Empowered, visit www.empowerednw.nhs.uk.
So welcome back to episode 3 of our Empowered Eating Northwest podcast. Today we're actually joined by a really exciting guest, but we'll introduce him in a little minute. So obviously I'm India and
I'm Georgia. I can't believe it's the third podcast. It feels like it's gone really quickly. But we've got lots of things lined up.
So it's been a month, I think, since our last podcast, and this is actually our Christmas special. So we're going to be talking about all things Christmas, but I think we should just fill you in on what's been going on over the last month.
We've both been really busy, haven't we? More recently, we had the big book, which was really good. Me and India both attended in person, and that was really exciting to see kind of lots of different professionals and what they've been doing over the past year and how they've contributed. So that was really good, and we managed to get a few freebies, didn't we?
Oh, we did. Also pet some, I can't even remember what it was called, a skinny pig. And
yes, it's hairless, wasn't it? And a 10 rec. Is that what it was? Looks a bit like a hedgehog.
To me, it's a hedgehog. So
yeah.
Yeah, it was a really good day. And then the day before that was actually my 25th birthday. Can't believe I'm getting a lot older. Quarter of a century. Christy's shaking his head, but yeah. It's been really nice because the last year, so 24 to 25, was actually probably one of my best years. It was probably one of the years that I've been the most well. I had no admissions, and it was just, I was not struggling in many ways. So it was really nice to actually celebrate this birthday and reach a new milestone. But yeah, that's kind of the most exciting thing that's happened for me this month. Spent some time in Manchester with family, which was really nice. Just been at uni.
Gosh, yeah. I feel like we're just so busy, and like it's like passing like ships sometimes, isn't it? Like trying to get hold of each other. But also on the day of the big book, there was the annual members meeting, and you had some exciting news, didn't you?
Yes, so I'm now a service user governor for Cheshire World Partnership, service user, ex-service user now, but yeah, that's really exciting. Put a bit more input in. I don't know how I can put more input in. I feel like when we were talking, what have we done in the last month? It all seems to be all work and NHS related.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really exciting to, have this role now and have a little bit more input.
No, absolutely. I'm just trying to think what I've been up to.
You did CPR, save someone's life.
Yeah, I had another placement on a surgical assessment ward, and that was really exciting. Got to see loads of different things, and kind of unfortunately, we had to kind of do CPR on someone, but he survived. So that was really good.
It's a big achievement. Well done. Okay, right, let's introduce to you Christian, who's actually not CWP, which is so exciting because it just seems to be all CWP, but Empowered is actually the whole of the Northwest. So we do have some other partnerships involved. So I'll hand over to Christian and let him introduce himself, because it's actually I had never heard of this role before. So Christian, fire away and tell everyone, what can you kind of do?
Thank you both for inviting me. My name is Christian. I am currently working in Lancashire, South Cumbria Community Eating Disorders Services. I am the consultant eating disorders dietitian for the Trust, and my remit covers the whole of the Trust, our 5 satellite community services, supporting the dietitians that work in those settings, and also the senior leadership team, which feeds into Empowered. So I'm part of the team that links in with Empowered when we are looking around support and admissions for some of our patients. So when India says she hasn't heard of this role before, obviously I'm guessing everyone that's listening has heard of dietitians. The slight variance here is that my role is as a consultant dietitian which in eating disorders, this is the first consultant role within the UK. It is a clinical role which affords me the luxury of working with the most complex patients across our patch and supporting and liaising with all the other clinicians around eating disorders for Lancashire, South Cumbria, and across the Northwest. And also, historically, I was working with the British Dietetic Association as their chair of their mental health specialist group. So that's a very quick resume.
Wow, that is amazing. And I feel like we are quite privileged to have you on here talking with us, because that is an amazing role. And it's really nice to, you know, see people from all of EmpowerED pulling together to do this podcast. So thank you for coming on. And I think today we're just going to be sharing some tips of how to cope at Christmas and some advice and that kind of thing. But yeah, thank you for explaining how you kind of link in with EmpowerED, because I know some people might be a little bit confused on, because it does seem to be a lot of CWP at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, we do cover such a you know, a massive, geographically we cover such a massive patch, so it's nice to have someone else and not just our faces. So yeah, and you know, linking with today's podcast, people do struggle with eating disorders around Christmas massively. You know, there's so much attention around food, and as you know, we spoke to Christian yesterday, and he was saying about, you know, it isn't just Christmas time. You know, it's other events around the year. It could be Christmas, birthdays, any religious holidays, weddings, you know, anything like that, because you know, we are very food orientated, and you know, food is a massive part of celebration. So you know, our tips and advice today are transferable. You can kind of have them kind of in your back pocket, and you know, when you are struggling, kind of try them out and see how you feel, really. I think as well, we wanted to kind of get a bit of a gist on the day in the life, really, of Christian's kind of role, and typically what that would look like. I don't know if you want to share that.
A day in the life. Well, it varies dramatically. So I have sort of two hats that I wear. One is part of the senior leadership team within the trust, so supporting the service development and provision of the eating disorders service across Lancashire and South Cumbria, which covers a huge geographic area. I think about 2,200 square miles. Right up to South Lakes, across to East Lancs, including Preston and West Lancashire as well. So we and Blackpool, Farleigh, Weir. So we cover a massive geographic area. So there's that, and we are one of the few all-age eating disorder services. So we are currently reviewing our current offer, and we'll be working towards having very clear delineated children and young people and adult services within that all age service as well. So we capture people from all age groups within our area. And that's one part of my role, and that would be the part of the role that links in with EmpowerED, who is our leader provide collaborative that supports the Northwest around managing people with eating disorder services, whether that is in acute care, secondary care, or in specialist eating disorder units. And then the other part is supporting the dietetic team within our trust, and also having my own clinical caseload where I work with the more complex patients that we have. So I have special interest in people with comorbidities, whether that be drug and alcohol misuse, substance misuse, neurodiverse patients as well, and people with personality disorders, or I personally have a preference to say complex trauma rather than EUPD. I think that's quite stigmatizing, but for ease, we do tend to use personality disorders, don't we? But I do wave the banner for saying complex trauma, because that's what it all boils down to. And picking up on what Georgia was saying earlier, I'm so glad to have been invited today to think about conversations around eating disorders at celebratory times, whether that be Christmas or any celebratory time in your life, whether it's birthday, marriage, religious festival, or whatever, and also to consider all eating disorders rather than the usual hierarchy of anorexia. So I think it's a great opportunity for that. So that also includes some of the work that I do as well. I work a lot with patients with really complex bulimia, where they are having quite significant admissions to acute settings because of their deranged electrolytes. So I do work with a complex range of patients, and that really challenges me and keeps me wanting to come to work each day. So there isn't a typical day. There's lots of meetings, as the NHS unfortunately always has. There's loads of opportunities for me to talk, which is excellent from my perspective, because I talk a lot. But the part I really enjoyed the most was the main impetus for me to move to the north, because if it isn't obvious, I'm not naturally a northerner, was to come and take on this role as a consultant within the AHP team within Lancashire, South Cumbria. So hopefully I will be a flag bearer for future roles where clinical specialism is celebrated as much as operational and management roles within the NHS.
Oh, that is fab.
Yeah.
You know, me and George's face just kept lighting up every time, because we are so glad that you don't really like the term personality disorder, because we hate that term too. It's not a disorder. It's what's happened to us throughout life. It's not who we are.
Reaction, you experience something so awful, and the NHS and a lot of services naturally put people into boxes, because often that allows for funding and certain treatments, but actually your mental health and your struggles and eating disorders is just a reaction to something so horrendous that happened to you, and there's nothing wrong with you. And I think there's so many negative connotations held both within society but also within the NHS and healthcare services, which can be a massive barrier to receiving treatment and care. And don't even get me started on exclusions, but it's so nice to hear a professional that feels so passionate, like we do.
Yeah.
I have a lot of soapboxes, unfortunately, so you might have to kick me off a few of them.
No, but it's great, because sometimes it's kind of like you go to a PD service, or you go to an ED service, or you go to, I don't know, a drug and alcohol service, but you can't be in all of them. So it's great to hear that you're working with people with comorbidities. I think that's something that I probably really would have appreciated when I was struggling, because I did get passed from pillar to post. It's either you've got an eating disorder or you've got a personality disorder. But then it actually turns out I'm autistic and have ADHD. So, that all fit,
Yeah.
it's the crossover is massive. So I think we could
It's not
ramble
black
all
and
day
white.
about
There's
personality
not
disorder and
right.
misdiagnosis.
Yeah.
You
Don't
know,
get
but
started.
yeah, it's
Happy to come
really
back
great.
another time and discuss that with you guys. But yeah,
Oh, we'll be here waiting. No, but it's really interesting. I did deliver some training. This is probably just for Christine's benefit, but about personalities and eating disorders, of how the comorbidities, and I did that for I think it was the CWP teams. But yeah, that's one of my absolute. I really love looking at that kind of thing, because of how I got passed around, and I don't think it's not beneficial. Somebody needs to be treated for everything. But yeah, that's
amazing.
that.
There was some research in the early 2010s with Professor Anthony Bateman and
Yes,
Paul Robinson,
Anthony
called the
Bateman.
Nourish study, which I was the dietitian for. It was a challenging study, but a very worthwhile study as well. So yeah, it's always been a passion of mine. So
Oh no, that's brilliant to hear. I'm gonna definitely look at that,
pick
but
my
we love
brains on
Anthony
that
Bateman.
later.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. So I just wanted to touch on some people that listen. So what kind of things do dietitians, what's their kind of input for someone that has an eating disorder? Is it all just, here's a meal plan, or, how does somebody suffering with an eating disorder, what happens when they see a dietitian?
Hopefully we dispel the myth that we are not meal plan dispensers. I avoid giving meal plans like the plague. I personally would rather work with someone to help them to develop their own meal plan. If they're really stuck and unable to make those decisions, then I will have sort of a bog standard one that will sort of meet general needs, but as they become more engaged with their own recovery, then it is about them developing their plan with my help. So I see the dietitian's role when working with the patient directly as a facilitator, someone there to support them to understand what their relationship is with food, to understand what their barriers are, and to help them move forward. It's not about calories, it's not about meal plans, it's not about eat well plate. It is about that relationship that that individual has with food and how they want to challenge it. And ultimately, dietetics is about behavior change. So the person that is working with the dietitian needs to be in a position where they want to make change. Doesn't mean they will be able to make change, but they need to want to make change. And if they're not ready to make change, that's absolutely okay. It's a sad position to be in, but unfortunately, we're not always ready all the time. So perhaps at that juncture, dietetics needs to be either in the background supporting the team that is supporting the individual, or taking a step back, because the journey towards recovery involves a whole multidisciplinary team, and dietetics is a small part of that. So I think the typical kind of work that I will do with the patient is discuss with them obviously what their goals are, and then work out what their barriers are to achieving those goals, and then working around that. And if food and numbers are involved and that's helpful, then I'll use food and numbers. If it isn't the helpful part of it, then I'll focus on something else. So I don't think there's a typical session with me, other than I would rarely ever give a meal plan unless it is someone on the autistic spectrum, where having that kind of structure is super helpful. I try to adapt. So whoever is I'm working with, I will try and listen to what they are telling me. Sometimes what they tell me and what they mean aren't always the same thing, and then try to work out the best way to help them move forward and get them towards the goals that they're looking to achieve. I know that's really vague and not really specific, but quite often the road to recovery isn't as specific as people want it to be, is it?
I think that's really,
yeah.
Yeah, because everyone is so different, aren't they? So there probably isn't a specific, straightforward answer to that. But it's a great idea of like for people that maybe haven't seen a dietitian before, like what your kind of role would be. But it's absolutely great to hear that you don't just throw meal plans at people. It's very person-centered, and it's whatever works for that person. But like you say, some people might have very distorted thoughts of what is helpful, and but yeah, like you say, it's a road to recovery. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
And when someone says dietitian, I know that when I first started to become unwell, and kind of went into eating disorder services, and the word dietitian, and it naturally in your head you go, oh, meal increase, like increasing calories, or whatever that may look like for that person. And there's so much more to a dietitian and dietetics than just a meal plan, or increasing and the stages and things like that. And it's really nice to hear that actually you don't just give a meal plan out. And sometimes a structure and a routine is helpful for some people, but a lot of the time it's really unhelpful, because then in the same breath, a lot of people then really struggle to get out of that routine and that structure and the timings of certain things later on down the line. So that's really nice to hear.
Yeah, important not to feed into the eating disorder and take on the rules that already exist.
Yeah.
So it's having some flexibility, isn't it? So I think flex is one of the most important things, because that's what most people with eating disorders don't have, is any flexibility. So it's me being flexible for them, and letting them understand that being flexible is a goal rather than something to avoid like the plague.
That sounds brilliant. Thank you for explaining, about dietitians. Because I feel like back in the day it wasn't like that for me, but that's a different
Look,
story.
there will be the food police,
Yeah.
and there will be the 40 fairies, as we're
Oh,
sometimes
that's the
accused of
one.
being. And absolutely, there will be dietitians that work like that. I think, if I'm completely honest, most dietitians are absolutely terrified of people with eating disorders. The majority of people with eating disorders, sorry for conforming to a stereotype, are very well informed, usually very well educated, often very high achievers. So you're kind of a scary bunch, let's be honest. And a dietitian who feels that normally they're in control and have the knowledge at their fingertips will be faced with someone that probably knows a lot more about certain elements of their conversation. If anyone asks me how much calories is in something, so don't ask a dietitian, ask someone with an eating disorder if you really want to know the calories of something. But the calories are not the point. So I try not to get fixated on that. But as I said, a lot of dietitians are quite challenged by people with an eating disorder. So any negative experiences are probably from someone with either in the wrong job, unfortunately, or are very inexperienced and haven't had the support of a wider MDT to develop their confidence in working with a very exciting and interesting population, but a very challenging one too.
Keep you on your toes.
It does, absolutely. I call it mental gymnastics.
Oh, that's there you go.
I'm sure we all do a bit of that.
Yeah, especially working in the NHS. So what kind of struggles do you see people with an eating disorder face at Christmas time? So what's like the most common? Because obviously Georgia and I know what struggles we face, but it'd be good to hear like, a general kind of from different kinds of eating disorders as well, because obviously we're not very well. I know I'm not going to speak for you, Georgia, but I'm not as knowledgeable on the other eating disorders because I haven't experienced them. So it'd be great to hear, kind of what you see, if any.
No, absolutely. So whether you are living with a restrictive eating disorder, a binge eating disorder, or bulimia, or one that doesn't neatly fit under any of those terms, and will have elements of all, any celebration where food is involved is going to be challenging. And then you couple that with the family and relationship dynamics that you also have. So I think a lot of people with eating disorders, it isn't just about the food. It isn't just about whether they want more or less or none or all. Often it's about the relationships with the people that they love, that they have challenges with. So you've got all of that. It's sort of like the perfect storm for a lot of people. They want to do really well. They're absolutely terrified of losing control. They're scared that if they don't do X or do Y, that something terrible is going to happen. So I think it's different for every single individual. But if you remember that it's all about coming together in a kind of unnatural environment with people you wouldn't always spend time with, in a place that you can't often escape. And we're talking about people without eating disorders here as well. So you're confined for 24, 48, 72 hours with people that you might not normally spend time with, that you might have some challenging relationships with, surrounded by food and expectation. So whether your natural inclination is to restrict and to withdraw, or to binge and to purge, or to exercise, or whatever it may be, it's a real sort of danger point for a lot of people. So I think people need to be really kind to themselves and understand what their challenges are, understand what their barriers are, and really think about the environment as well. So I think often when we talk about problems with eating disorders at Christmas, it's all around the food. and the food is only part of it. So whilst the food might be scary for whatever reason, I think the environment is equally challenging or equally supportive, depending on which way you want to look at it. So I think what people really need to think about is what part of that day, of that week, of that hour is going to be supportive or is going to be challenging for them. And when they think about those settings, they also need to think about what they are requiring themselves to do, what the expectations of others are. So have a backup plan, have a sort of a risk management plan that can give you that opportunity to have the least stressful Christmas you can, or the least stressful celebratory occasion, depending on what it is for you, and not to fixate too much on whether you're going to have Christmas dinner with all the trimmings, rather about, are you going to be able to emotionally get through Christmas and have an enjoyable time with friends and family? And if food is incorporated into that, then so be it, but not to fixate on it.
Yeah, it's so important to remember, you know, it's not just about the food, you know, it's about the that massive expectation that we all sit around a table together and we have all this food and drink and things like that, and chocolate and gifts. You know, a lot of people receive foods or chocolate and things like that as gifts, and depending on what you are struggling with, you know, it's equally as distressing. So you know, I remember kind of sitting at you know, Christmas time, or you know, if it was a wedding or something like that, and just feeling like there's a massive expectation for me to eat this, or to look like I'm enjoying it, or look like I'm having a good time and socialize with all these people that I don't usually see day to day, that I don't necessarily feel comfortable with. And then coupled with that, there were some people that knew that I struggled, there were some people that didn't know. So if there were comments made to me, you know, that adds on top of it. And then feeling guilty for feeling the way that I felt, feeling guilty for having to take time for myself, or maybe withdrawing for a little bit, or things like that. So it's such a massive cocktail of anxiety and just, you know, all these different emotions. So I think it's really important to take time for yourself and, you know, kind of sit back and think, you know, it's okay to struggle. It's okay if I don't feel merry and happy or all these positive emotions. It's completely normal.
I think it's really important to like focus on the here and now as well, not kind of thinking like, oh, tomorrow is Boxing Day and I'm meeting more people, and it's kind of like you're never really in the moment. But I think it's kind of just like looking at who's around you, and you may not like all of them, but you know, there are people there that you do love, and just there is high expectation. I really struggle with expectation. If I don't meet it, I feel guilty. If I over meet it, I feel guilty. So I think it's just having a realistic expectation of what's going to happen, and you know, have that cope ahead plan, bringing my DBT skills in. So you know, what you're worried about Christmas, and then kind of thinking what's worked in the past to
Break
kind
it
of
down,
yeah. And I always find, I don't know whether this is like well, as I look back, I think from a child I've always done this, but when I'm very overwhelmed, I just need time by myself for maybe an hour, you know, just sat in my room, just on my own without everyone around me. So maybe having, you know, somewhere to escape to, just so you can have that kind of downtime and, you know, practice your breathing or whatever you need to do just in that moment, have a bit of a distraction plan. But yeah, just remember Christmas is only once a year. It's, you know, I know there are many celebrations, but I did this when I was struggling, but I was always like, right, I'm going to use Christmas to, what better time to eat loads than at Christmas and gain some weight and challenge myself. And then I'd look at it in front of me and I'm like, oh, I really don't know how I'm going to do this. I'd do it and then I'd feel awful after. It's kind of just, you know, being realistic on being in the moment and what you might, I don't know. I don't want to say what you might feel because it's hard to tell, but you know, it's kind of having those realistic expectations and talking to other people. So, you know, whoever you're closest to, and just say, these are the things that I'm really worried about Christmas. So you're not on your own, because it can feel quite lonely being in a room of, you know, the whole family. And some of, like you say, Georgia, some of them know, some of them don't know. So if some of them don't know and you're not eating enough, they're kind of like, what's wrong with her? Or, you know, if you're eating a lot and, you know, they know that you've got an eating disorder, like, oh wow, go on. Like, you know, it's really it's difficult, the comments, but you know, some people just are uneducated around eating disorders, so they might say things that, you know, that they just don't know that it's wrong, or
And
the
people
impact it can have.
understand their own level of perception, don't they? If people haven't
Yeah.
experienced something, how are they supposed to know? So obviously it's our job and to educate people like that. And you know, we are experts or can be experts in our own illness. So I think it's really important to, you know, sit back and think, right, I need to make a plan for myself, if that's helpful for you, and think, right, so if I can confide in mum, dad, or maybe when I was
Brother,
younger, I was in
sister.
foster care, yeah. So it would be, you know, my carer or whatever, and I'd sit and be like, right, you know, this is going to be a really hard time for me, so let's plan ahead. You know, kind of having that structure did help on Christmas Day for me, but again, for some people that won't be helpful. Just kind of, you know, being open and honest. It's okay to speak out and kind of tell someone how you feel and what's going to be helpful. You know, you might say, you know, I'm going to take some time away, or would it be okay to sit and do, I don't know, some games after we've eaten? Any distractions? So kind of having that little plan for yourself, and you know, almost like India, I did DBT as well. So I'd have my little bank of things that would help me. So I'd kind of go to that when you know, I really needed to. So you know, it's definitely worth having you know, some kind of backup plans should you know, really be struggling.
Yeah, and I guess the reality is everyone will feel like they're under the microscope. And on the flip side, you're really not that interested. Not everyone will be watching you. They're more interested, will they get the last mince pie, not whether you've had any mince pies at all. And yes, there will be really insensitive relatives that will make comments, but they would make comments to every single person around the table, not just you. So it's accepting the ones that are insensitive and try not to take it personally. I know that's really difficult, but just remembering that this is about your enjoyment of the moment and not about other people's perception of where you're at in your recovery, if they understand that you're in recovery. And I guess if you are thinking about the time, I think it's really important to have a plan. I'm not much of a planner, but I think in this context it is really important. You can't pull a distraction technique out of your hat once you're already distressed.
Yeah.
But you can predict when you will become distressed. There will be times during the holiday period that will be more challenging than others. So if you know that pre, post, during meal is going to be the time that you're going to struggle the most, then you implement a plan that will automatically be distracting you at those times. So you don't wait until you're distressed. You start the distraction before you're distressed, so you don't have to rely on it, because it's really I would say almost impossible to bring someone down off a cliff edge when they're already on the cliff edge. So you want to prevent getting to the cliff edge in the first place. So whatever your distraction technique might be, it's important to have it in place, ready for when you know that you're going to feel vulnerable. So when people really struggle to think of what are distraction techniques for me, a question I always like to ask people is, when was the last time you said to yourself, oh my goodness, where did all the time go? Whatever you are doing in that moment is something that distracts you so completely that you lose track of time. That, for you, is the perfect distraction technique. For me, it's reading or watching box sets. I can quite easily lose all track of time when doing both. So for me, I know that if I want to get lost in time, that doing either of those activities before I'm anxious would be something that would work really well for me. So it will be different for everyone, but if you can understand and predict what is going to re-engage your mind in a different way of thinking at a time when you're most likely to be stressed, then that's going to be a really good opportunity for you. But also, I think thinking about the people that you're with, the environment that you're in, there will be some very protected times, places, people, and the exact opposite, some very challenging times, places, and people. So if you can couple those times up with your most scary challenges and your most protective routines, and marry the two together. It's kind of doing like a risk matrix. So you're putting together your most cherished times, peoples, and places with your most scary challenges, and that way you're most likely to succeed. And then if you know something's going to be super easy going, then perhaps that's when you'll want to do something a little bit more difficult. But don't try and do the most difficult stuff at the most difficult time, because you will fail. Or if you don't fail in the moment, there will be repercussions later. And as you were mentioning in India, you would beat yourself up afterwards and feel so guilty about it all. So don't put yourself into a situation where you're going to recriminate yourself later. So give yourself that space, give yourself the opportunity to build on small successes rather than trying to be the perfectionist and doing everything right all at once. Christmas or any celebration isn't about proving yourself. It's about engaging and enjoying and relaxing, and that will be different for every single individual. So take that in mind. It isn't about showing to everyone that you're better, because that's nonsense.
I think that's really important, comparing, and what people see on social media can be a massive influence. Like, oh, they're really enjoying Christmas, but I'm really anxious about it. It's kind of, this is your journey, this is your Christmas. It's kind of what works for me, what am I going to find challenging, and just not thinking about other people that you see on social media, which can be really difficult. But you know what you see on social media isn't always the truth, and it's not always the whole story. So, and like, I know back in the day, in Christmas on Instagram was a massive Georgia, what was it?
That's another episode. Yeah,
Yes.
every community and expectation around kind of, even throughout your recovery journey, I still, and not ashamed to admit it, I still sometimes reflect and I sit and think, oh, say if I'm meeting a friend that I've not met in a long time, or a relative, or whoever it may be, and the last time they saw you, you weren't necessarily in the greatest place, or you've not seen, I don't know, a nan or your auntie for a year or 6 months, and you're on that journey. It can be very, you compare and you think, oh, the judgment and things like that. So it can be really, really difficult, but it's okay. It is normal to feel that way, and it's about kind of not setting yourself up to fail. You're not going, no one's Christmas or experience is going to be identical. We are all different, even people that don't have mental health problems or eating disorders. So it's, you have your own unique experience, whatever that may look like.
And even if food isn't the main problem for you and you can fake it till you make it, but your compensatory behaviors after the food is really where you struggle, then that's where you need to build in your strategies to support yourself. So you can't go and engage in your compensatory behaviors, whether that's exercise, whether that's purging, whatever it may be, self-harm, all the different ways that people cope with the overwhelming feeling of having done something that wasn't what they really felt they should be doing. So it might not be the food, and let's not fixate on the food. It might be the aftermath of that. So be mindful what your problem is. Don't focus on what other people think your problem is. Be true to yourself and identify where you're really going to struggle, and put those support mechanisms in place for yourself. So it is a case of planning. It is a case of having an itinerary. It is a case of having safe spaces and places and times and people, and also those activities rather than distractions, activities that you can engage in that will use a different part of your brain, so you can't think about the things that you would normally think. That's why they tell you to do stuff with your hands, because the part of your brain that is engaged when you're doing manual stuff is a different part of the brain that would be engaged when you're anxious. So if you are already engaged in that manual stuff, like a puzzle or knitting or whatever it may be, your brain will less likely to be able to engage in the anxiety, because it's two different parts of the brain that can't work simultaneously. But if the anxiety is already there, you're not going to be able to kick in the puzzle making. So you want the puzzle making or the knitting or the macrame or whatever it may be to happen before the anxiety or the stress kicks in.
Prevention's better than cure.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's noticing those warning signs though, and making note of what those warning signs are, so you do know when you are, because it can be really difficult to tell when you're getting into a heightened state. So it's noticing those really early warning signs, so you can put those mechanisms in place so you're not so distressed. But yeah, that's been lots of advice, and I hope people find that useful, because I know I would probably have found this helpful to listen to around Christmas. Some advice from people who have been through it, and professionals. So yeah, it's been great to talk about this. I think we should kind of end on a light note and maybe talk about what we're doing for Christmas. And because I don't worry about Christmas anymore, and I don't know whether this is because of what I'm doing at Christmas, but I don't really, I don't dread it like I used to. It used to be an absolute dread. I didn't think I'd be able to go through it, and all the way through the lead up, you'd get that really intense anxiety, and then after. But I'm so grateful that I have come out the other side, and I'm now not, on that path. But so, Christian, what are you doing for Christmas? Let's start there.
You had to go to me first, didn't you? So I'm kind of an Ebenezer Scrooge bar humbug. So
Fair enough.
despite my name, I'm not into celebrating Christmas. So although I do like twinkly lights, so my Christmas tree, which is already up as of last night, is a monstrosity with thousands of lights on it. So my version of Christmas is anything that glitters, but the actual celebration part, not something that I really get that involved in.
I think quite a lot of people are like that, and I know for me, Christmas just doesn't feel like Christmas anymore. But if a lot of people
Maybe
don't
that's
celebrate
getting older.
Christmas. Well, yeah, that's probably for me, yeah. But Georgia, what are you doing?
Well, so I will be finishing uni in a couple of weeks, which I'm so excited for and I'm so ready for. And I'm getting married on 21st of December, so
No way.
pretty close to. And then on the 23rd, I'm flying out to Mexico for 10 days, so I'll be there for Christmas and New Year. And then when I come back, I'll be ready for the last few months of uni before I qualify. But yeah, really exciting. It'd be weird, like not spending Christmas like in the rain, snow, sleet, sludge, and being on a beach somewhere, hopefully. So yeah, I'm really excited for that.
Wow. Rub it in, why don't you? Congratulations. That sounds amazing.
I'm kind of joining you on that one. I don't
Yeah.
I've not spent Christmas at home for the past, I want to say like 6 years, except the time I was in hospital, obviously. But yeah, I'll be in Abu Dhabi for Christmas and then Dubai for New Year.
Very nice.
I think this is definitely probably like the 21st or 22nd time I've actually been to Dubai. That is my favourite place, my happy place. So I'm very lucky that I'm able to fly over there with my family, my close family. And yeah, I'm really excited for another Christmas in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. It's
Amazing.
Love to go to Dubai.
And us mere
well,
mortals that are left in the northwest to the miserable cold and wind, we will be thinking of you with complete and utter jealousy.
we'll send you pictures.
Lovely, thank you. Appreciated.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been, I've really enjoyed this episode. Not
Me
that I don't
too.
enjoy the others. But no, I just feel like we really got stuck in, and I'm afraid we might have to rob you for a part 2.
Yeah.
Potentially
Happily.
in the future.
I think a good episode on comorbidities, maybe. I think that'd be a good episode
Bit
in
of
the
a deep
future.
dive.
Always happy to talk.
But yeah, no,
Which
it's
will be
been
my
absolute.
motto.
No, we've been so grateful to have you on today. I've really enjoyed it as well, and I hope you've enjoyed it, Christian.
Oh no, absolutely. It's been very natural and flowed lovely. So I really appreciate it, and thank you for both inviting me.
And we
great.
hope that everyone listening has a lovely Christmas, and
Yeah.
we'll catch up with you all soon.
Nadolig Llawen to any ones from North Wales as well.